got fired by my boss's arrogant son. But he missed one detail that changed everything. I can still remember the exact moment it happened, down to the smell of burnt coffee drifting from the break room. It was a Tuesday morning in late October. I had just finished reviewing the Q3 analytics reports when I heard unfamiliar footsteps echoing down the glass hallway of our San Diego office. Confident, sharp, but not the good kind of confidence. I looked up from my desk, and there he was. Bryce, the founder's only son. Barely 31, wearing a crisp designer suit and a $2,000 watch that screamed more wannabe mogul than seasoned leader. The ink on his MBA diploma from Wharton was likely still wet. His father, Mr. Langford, had built Solaris EdgeTech from a tiny warehouse to a multi-million-dollar software firm over nearly 4 decades. And me, I'd been there for 26 of those years, longer than Bryce had even been alive. He didn't smile, didn't say good morning, just gave me that smug half grin, the kind people wear when they mistake entitlement for intelligence. Rebecca, he said, folding his arms like he was on the cover of Forbes, come to my office. Now. No please, no explanation, just now. A strange coldness crept through me. Something was wrong. I grabbed my leather-bound notebook and followed, trying to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he wanted insight on our upcoming product launch. Maybe he wanted to understand the renewal strategy for our enterprise accounts. But deep down, I already knew. The moment I stepped inside, he didn't even offer me a seat. He leaned against his father's old walnut desk, the one I'd sat across from for 2 decades, and spoke like he was announcing the weather. "This won't take long," he said flatly. "You're irrelevant." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He chuckled, the kind of chuckle that makes your skin crawl. "Look, no hard feelings, Rebecca, but you're from a different era. We're pivoting faster, leaner, younger. You've been here too long. You're comfortable. This company needs fresh energy." I stood there frozen. For a second, I truly thought he was joking, but the hollow look in his eyes told me he wasn't. "You're firing me," I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Exactly. Pack your things. Security will escort you out in an hour." My fingers tightened around my notebook. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't just some administrator. I was the senior contracts director. I had written the very operational agreements the company relied on to function. I was the one who renegotiated with suppliers during the 2009 downturn, the one who secured our top 3 clients who still accounted for more than half our revenue, and this child in a suit was tossing me aside like I was an outdated fax machine. "On what grounds?" I asked. He shrugged. "Restructuring." "Look it up." I stood still, my heart racing. Rage, shock, disbelief. 1,000 thoughts raced through me, but I didn't argue. Instead, I smiled. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because suddenly I remembered something he didn't know. Without another word, I walked out, past the stairs, past the whispers. None of them spoke up, and I didn't blame them. In corporate America, self-preservation is everything. Back at my desk, I packed quietly. Phone charger, my son's graduation photo, and that ceramic mug from our 20th anniversary celebration. Then I glanced at the glass wall of the boardroom. Bryce stood inside, shaking hands with a group of investors, grinning like he ran the place. But he didn't know what I knew. 5 years ago, after a failed negotiation nearly cost us a $9 million deal, Mr. Langford had asked me to add a special clause to our biggest client's agreement. A clause stating that only I, Rebecca Nolan, had the legal authority to renegotiate, renew, or amend that contract. Without my approval, the entire deal would become null and void. And Bryce? He hadn't read it. Not yet. But he would. And when he did, his little promotion party would be over. And Bryce, he hadn't read it. Not yet. As I sat in my car, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, one thought echoed louder than the rest. "Let's see how confident you are tomorrow, Bryce." I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, the call came. And when it did, the very first words I heard weren't a greeting. They were a roar. Do you know what happened? My phone buzzed again before I could even respond. I stared at the screen. Arthur Langford, the founder, the man who built Solaris EdgeTech from nothing but a garage and an idea. The man I respected more than anyone in my professional life. I took a deep breath and hit answer. His voice hit like thunder. Rebecca, why the hell am I hearing that you've been fired? No warmth, no pleasantries, just fury, barely restrained. For a moment, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I didn't even know where to begin. Your son, I said quietly. Bryce. He told me I was irrelevant. There was a sharp inhale, then a sudden clatter on the other end. Paper slammed drawers, flung open footsteps pounding across hardwood. Irrelevant! Irrelevant! He barked, his voice cracking from disbelief. I winced and pulled the phone slightly away from my ear. Then came the words that would mark the beginning of Bryce's downfall. Do you even know who she is? I could practically hear Arthur's blood pressure spiking. He wasn't just angry, he was stunned, betrayed. His own son, the one he'd groomed to take over the company, had just made a move so catastrophically stupid it took his breath away. Read the contract, he growled to someone near him. Read it! Now! There was a pause, then muffled voices in the background, pages turning, footsteps retreating into a quiet room. The silence stretched on heavy, suffocating. I sat in my car outside my condo, unmoving. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure he could hear it through the line. Then another voice came on. Bryce. Low. Unsteady. What is this? Arthur didn't even try to contain himself. You didn't read it, did you? You arrogant fool. You walked in here thinking you knew everything and you didn't even read the fine print. Another shuffle of papers. Then Bryce again, his voice cracking. It says she's the sole authorized negotiator on the Apex contract. No modifications, no renewals, no discussions without her signature. Correct, Arthur snapped. Because 5 years ago, after your genius idea to bypass legal review nearly lost us $10 million, I told Rebecca to draft that clause. As protection. Another thud, his fist maybe slamming the desk. And now, you fired the only person who holds authority over our biggest client. That contract represents over 30% of our revenue. Do you even understand what you've done? Bryce stammered. I didn't. You didn't think Arthur spat. That's the damn problem. The call went silent for a long beat. Then his voice returned lower, directed at me. Rebecca, where are you right now? I cleared my throat. At home. Waiting to see how this unfolds. If this story stirred something in you, don't miss what comes next. Hit subscribe and join me for the rest of this journey, because the real power shift is just getting started. He exhaled long and heavy, the sound of a man, realizing just how deep a hole his son had dug. Rebecca, I'm so sorry for what Bryce did. And I need you. I need you to come in immediately. Apex's renewal meeting is at 10. If you're not in that room, we lose everything. A swirl of emotions hit me. Part of me wanted to let it all burn. Let Arthur see the cost of trusting someone so painfully unqualified. But the other part of me, the one who built relationships and led with integrity, wasn't ready to see my work reduced to ashes. I'll consider it, I said carefully, but not without conditions. Silence. Then a firm reply. Name them. My role, my authority, my job security in writing, I said. And I don't want Bryce anywhere near my department. No oversight, no involvement. Done, Arthur said without hesitation. And one more thing, I added. Voice sharp now. I'm not walking through the employee entrance. There was a dry chuckle on the other end. Fair enough. Tired, but genuine. Fair enough. I hung up and sat in my car a moment longer, watching the morning sun hit the side of the Solaris EdgeTech building, a place I had given over 2 decades of my life. My phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls, all from Bryce. I didn't answer. The 4th buzz was a text. Rebecca, this was a misunderstanding. Let's be professional. We need you back. Call me. I smiled, slowly, deliberately. The kind of smile that holds no forgiveness. There was no apology, no recognition of the damage he'd done, just desperation cloaked in corporate courtesy. I slipped the phone into my purse, stepped out of the car, and squared my shoulders. Today, I wasn't just walking into work, I was walking in on my terms, and something told me Bryce had no idea just how bad this day was about to get. When I arrived at the building, it was just after 9:30 a.m., but I didn't head for the employee parking garage. I pulled directly into the circular drive, the one reserved for board members and high-profile clients. I stepped out in a tailored navy suit heels, clicking across the marble tile. Each step felt different, confident, steady. I wasn't here to plead for my position. I was here to reclaim my authority. Inside the lobby, Claire, the receptionist, jumped up from her desk the moment she saw me. "Ms. Nolan," she stammered. I wasn't expecting you." I smiled politely. "Mr. Langford is expecting me. Let him know I'm here." She nodded so fast I thought she might fall over. Right away. Behind me, I could feel it. The atmosphere shifting. Heads turned. Conversations halted. Screens froze mid-scroll. I stepped into the elevator without a word. As the door slid shut, another text came through. "Rebecca, please, respond. We're on the same side here." I chuckled. The same side? That was laughable. The elevator dinged. I walked straight onto the executive floor. Normally, I only visited for contract signings. Today, I wasn't summoned. I was returning by invitation. On my terms. At the end of the hallway stood Arthur Langford, founder of Solaris EdgeTech. His face was tense, his expression tired. "Rebecca," he said, nodding, "thank you for coming." I returned the nod, but not the handshake. Let him feel the distance. Let him know this wasn't a friendly favor. It was a negotiation. "Let's talk in my office," he said, opening the door. And there he was, Bryce, sitting in the corner like a scolded intern. Pale, jaw clenched. His phone sat face down on the table, but his fingers hovered over it like it could still save him. His expression shifted the moment he saw me. Recognition, regret, maybe even fear. I didn't look back. Arthur closed the door behind us and exhaled heavily. "Rebecca." He began. "What happened yesterday was unacceptable. I should never have given Bryce unchecked authority. That mistake was mine." I said nothing. Let him speak. "You're not irrelevant," he continued. "You're one of the most valuable professionals this company has ever had." Bryce shifted uncomfortably, but didn't speak. Arthur reached for a folder and slid it across the desk. "Your new contract," he said. "Director of Strategic Partnerships. Full authority over the Apex account and related operations. Effective immediately. No interference from anyone." I opened it, scanning the first page. My lawyer would review it later, but it was solid. My authority, my security, my terms. I nodded. Accepted. And for the first time, I turned toward Bryce. "You tried to erase me," I said calmly, "but you didn't read the fine print." He dropped his gaze. "You thought your name could erase 26 years of work relationships and trust with a single decision." He opened his mouth. "Rebecca, look." No, I cut him off. "You don't get to speak. Not to me." I turned back to Mr. Langford. "The Apex meeting is scheduled in 20 minutes. I assume we're still going forward?" He nodded quickly. "Yes. Mr. Corwin's team is already in the conference room." "Good," I replied. "Then we don't have time for pointless apologies." I stood, adjusted my jacket, and turned toward the door. But just as my fingers touched the handle, Arthur's voice stopped me. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "after this meeting, we'll need to talk. About the future." I paused. "Of the company," he added. Then, more pointedly, "and about Bryce." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because when I opened the door, what I saw in the hallway confirmed everything I already knew. The corridor was lined with people, some pretending to be busy, others openly watching. Whispers, glances awkward, silences. News travels fast in a glass building. And as I walked toward the conference room, it wasn't with the slow, hesitant steps of someone pleading for redemption. It was the calm, assured walk of a woman who knew she was the reason the walls hadn't crumbled. I glanced through the glass wall of the conference room. Inside, I spotted Mr. Corwin and his senior team seated and waiting. And outside, pacing like a caged predator, was Bryce. His face wasn't smug anymore. It was pale, tight, panicked. He stopped cold when he saw me approach. His jaw clenched, his posture stiffened, and for a second, he just stared. Because in that moment, it finally hit him. This wasn't his company anymore. Not in any way that mattered. The second I stepped into the room, the energy shifted. Not just for me, but for everyone at that table. Mr. Corwin, a serious man in his late 50s, stood slightly as I entered. His expression eased the moment he saw me. His two advisors, Rachel and Marcus, exchanged glances, then nodded in quiet acknowledgement. Rebecca, Mr. Corwin said, "Good to see you." "Thank you for waiting," I replied, my voice even. He looked at me carefully. I was starting to wonder if, well, you know. His eyes flicked toward the glass, toward Bryce still pacing outside like a shark denied the water. "Oh, I know," I said calmly, setting my files on the table. "But rest assured, we're proceeding as planned." Arthur entered moments later, closing the door firmly behind him. He nodded at the Apex team, but avoided looking in his son's direction. "Apologies for the confusion," he said smoothly. "There's been internal restructuring, a diplomatic way of saying my son nearly wrecked the company." Mr. Corwin raised an eyebrow. "We've done business together for 12, 13 years. And yet, when we arrived this morning, someone told my team Rebecca no longer worked here." I looked toward Arthur, giving him the space and the responsibility to clean up the mess. His jaw tightened. That information was inaccurate. Rebecca remains the sole authorized negotiator for this account per the terms we agreed upon 5 years ago. Corwin turned to me, his gaze narrowing. "So that clause was real?" I gave a slight nod. "Very real." Rachel leaned forward. "And the rumors about leadership changes, I kept my expression neutral. We're here to discuss the future of this partnership. Everything else is background noise." Corwin cracked a grin. "Glad to hear it." Through the glass, I saw Bryce now, frantically speaking into his phone, his expression twisted with panic. He was watching, but he couldn't come in. Not today. Not with what he'd done. And he knew it. "Let's begin," I said, opening the final draft of the renewal agreement. As outlined in our previous discussions, the terms have been updated to reflect the increased distribution and logistics overhead on your end. For the next 40 minutes, it was business direct, measured, professional. The kind of negotiation I'd led dozens of times before, but never with this much riding on it. Each glance from Mr. Corwin asked the same unspoken question. Is this company still stable? And with each point we confirmed, I gave him his answer. Yes, it is. Because I'm still here. Arthur flinched, but said nothing. Mr. Corwin continued. But seeing her here, knowing she's still handling this, that makes all the difference. He clicked his pen shut and smiled. You have a deal. Relief didn't hit me like a wave. It was quieter than that. Like a tight spring in my chest, slowly releasing click by click. We stood and shook hands. Rachel and Marcus followed his lead. As Mr. Corwin gathered his papers, he added, You may want to tighten your chain of command. Chaos isn't a good look. Arthur nodded stiffly. Understood. As the Apex team exited the room, I walked them to the elevators. Just before stepping in, Rachel turned to me. Rebecca, she said quietly, if things ever change around here, call me. Seriously, you deserve better than this circus. I smiled genuine this time. Thank you. I'll remember that. As the elevator doors closed, I turned back toward the conference room just in time to see Bryce storming toward me, his face twisted in a mess of panic, anger, and something almost like disbelief. You just had to make me look bad, he spat. His voice was low but shaking. I tilted my head completely calm. You did that all by yourself. He opened his mouth to fire back, but another voice sliced through the hallway. Bryce. Arthur's voice. Cold, measured, final. My office. Now. Bryce looked like he wanted to protest, but one glance at his father's face told him better. I watched them disappear down the corridor, the tension between them so thick I could feel it in my chest. For a moment, I stood alone. 26 years, 2 hours of negotiation, and everything had changed, or was about to. The Apex deal was secure, but I knew this wasn't over. Bryce wasn't the kind of man who lost quietly, and something in Arthur's face told me a reckoning was coming. I exhaled slowly, straightened my jacket, and walked back to my office. But the unease followed me. Over the next few days, the office felt different. Not just because the Apex renewal had been signed, not even because Arthur had made it clear I was back with more authority than before. No, the shift was something less visible and more chilling. People were watching me. Some offered polite smiles when I passed, quiet, careful smiles that said, "Glad you're back, but we're keeping our heads down." Others avoided eye contact altogether. Conversations fell to whispers the moment I entered a hallway. You could feel it in the air, like the entire building was holding its breath. Bryce wasn't pacing anymore, but he wasn't gone either. His office door stayed closed most of the day, but now and then, I saw him slipping into meetings with select department heads, hovering over desks, whispering, sometimes laughing. But never looking at me. I recognized that laugh. I'd heard it before, right before he fired me. And I knew he hadn't accepted defeat. Not really. The first sign came Thursday, an email from Apex's logistics coordinator. Polite, routine, but wrong. "Hi, Rebecca. Just confirming you requested the shipment schedule be delayed by 2 weeks. Seems unusual based on contract terms, but happy to adjust." My stomach dropped. I hadn't made any such request. I checked my sent folder. Nothing. Then I reviewed the thread, and there it was, an email apparently from me. My signature, my usual formatting, my closing line. Everything looked right, except I hadn't written it. A cold chill ran up my spine. I forwarded it to Apex immediately. "This request was not sent by me. Please disregard until we clarify internally." Corwin replied almost instantly. "Understood. Figured something seemed strange. Keep me posted." Crisis averted for now. But I knew exactly what this was. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a warning. The second sign came Friday. I opened the internal dashboard to approve travel reimbursements for the Apex meeting. Denied. Flagged for unauthorized travel. I blinked. I had never had an expense rejected. Not in 26 years. I opened the report. In the notes, per updated policy pre-approval from the executive office required. B.L. Bryce Langford. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't about money. This was a message. This wasn't about money. It was about sending a message. The Apex deal might have gone through, but Bryce was still here. And now he wanted to remind me of that. By Monday morning, the sabotage was undeniable. A spreadsheet I'd submitted to finance, flawless when I sent it, came back flagged with multiple issues. Values swapped. Totals misaligned. My name tagged with a note, multiple inaccuracies in data provided by Rebecca Nolan. Please verify before further use. It was subtle, quiet, a careful kind of poison. Classic corporate sabotage, nothing loud enough to raise alarms, nothing that would violate policy outright, but just enough to plant doubt, to slowly chip away at something more valuable than my title, my reputation. And I knew exactly what this was. I'd seen it before. Years ago, during my first job out of grad school. A senior VP who couldn't confront problems face to face, so he'd work from the shadows, close doors, deny tools, quietly undercut people until they broke down or gave up. Then he'd lean back, smile, and say, "Maybe it's time to move on." But I wasn't 24 anymore, and I wasn't naive. Not this time. I began documenting everything. Every denial, every fabricated error, every discrepancy in communication. Screenshots, backups, time-stamped folders. I created an encrypted log, noting every event, who was copied, who wasn't, what changed, and when. I wasn't trying to be subtle. I didn't need to be. When it sent a vague ticket request about unusual login activity under my user ID, I replied immediately with Arthur Langford copied. When finance flagged my spreadsheet, I sent back the original file along with version history from our secured internal system. And each time Bryce made a move, I responded with quiet precision. Each reply CC'd someone new. Eventually, legal. Then came Wednesday. I was walking past the small conference room near the east hallway when I heard voices heated, frustrated. "She's unstable," Bryce said. "Since she came back, she's been erratic, aggressive. I don't think she's capable of managing high-value clients anymore." Another voice answered someone I didn't recognize. "Probably one of the newer executives, but she just closed Apex," the voice replied. "Under serious pressure, too." Bryce scoffed. "She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck." My hands balled into fists. So this was the next phase. Poison the well. See just enough doubt in enough ears so that it wasn't about the contract clause anymore. It was about me, whether I could be trusted, whether I was a liability. That night, I sat alone in my condo watching the city lights flicker across the glass windows. I wasn't angry. I'd already been through anger. Now I was focused. Because this wasn't about just one deal, or a job title, or even about getting fired. It was about every night I'd stayed late while others left early. Every weekend I gave to someone else's deadline. Every fire I'd put out for someone who never said thank you. And I wasn't about to let someone like Bryce Langford erase all of that. Not quietly, not ever. By Thursday morning, the air in the building had shifted. The hallway conversations weren't just cautious now. They were heavy. You could feel it, the static in the air, the pause before something snapped. People weren't just watching me anymore. They were waiting for something to break. And then the email came. Subject: Mandatory Meeting, Executive Audit Committee, from Arthur Langford. Time 10:00 a.m., boardroom, A. The word audit alone sent chills through the floor. You didn't schedule one of those unless something serious was unraveling. At 9:55, I made my way toward the executive boardroom. The hallway was lined with people, some pretending to scroll through their phones, others just staring openly curious. Everyone knew this wasn't just another meeting. Inside the room was already half full. Arthur sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. To his right were two internal auditors, David, head of internal risk, and Monica from compliance. Their laptops were open. A thick folder lay between them. And across the table, Bryce, slouched in his chair, arms crossed, foot tapping like a man one breath away from panic. When Bryce saw me walk in, his expression tightened. He tried to muster that same arrogant smirk he always wore. But it flickered, faltered, because even he knew this wasn't going to go his way. "Thank you, everyone." Arthur Langford began, his voice steady. "We're here to address serious irregularities flagged by our internal audit." David, the lead auditor, cleared his throat and opened a thick folder. Over the past week, we investigated a series of anomalies: unauthorized logins, altered spreadsheets, falsified emails. These weren't external breaches. He turned his laptop to display a web of login activity. They were internal. Specifically, we traced activity to two credential sets, one belonging to Bryce Langford's executive assistant and one belonging to Bryce himself. Bryce sat upright. "That's insane." Anyone could have. David raised a hand. "Let me finish." A. He clicked to the next slide. Multiple incidents were cross-referenced. Denied expense reports, altered emails, even shipment delays, all traced to your credentials. A long silence stretched. Bryce's bravado cracked. "You don't have proof," he said, voice shaking. "This is circumstantial." David didn't blink. "Actually, it's not." He flipped to the next page. "Here's security footage, October 3rd, 4:57 p.m. Bryce logging into the shared terminal used to send the falsified Apex request." Bryce went pale. Arthur didn't yell. He just sighed, the kind that comes after decades of building something, only to watch it nearly fall apart. "Bryce," he said quietly, "I gave you chance after chance. I defended you when the board had doubts. I told myself you just needed time. He shook his head. But this is sabotage, theft, a direct attack on the people who held this company together. Bryce opened his mouth, closed it. His hands trembled. Effective. Immediately, Arthur said, "You are terminated. Your shares are frozen pending legal review. Security is waiting." Bryce stood. "You can't do this. I'm your son." Arthur's eyes didn't soften. "I'm your father. But here I'm the CEO. And this is business." Security entered silently. Bryce looked between them, then at me. And for the first time, he didn't look smug. He looked small. They escorted him out. The door closed. Silence fell. Then Arthur turned to me. "Rebecca?" He said softer now. "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the future of this company." He slid a folder toward me. "Coup. Full authority. Report only to me." I opened it, then looked up. "On one condition. Anything. No more protecting people because of who they are. Not family, not anyone." Arthur nodded, agreed. And just like that, everything changed. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below, not just for me, but for everyone who's been through it. Let's remind each other that quiet strength, resilience, and integrity still matter. Your words might inspire someone else to stand tall. And if you believe people like Bryce don't get the final word, hit that like button. We're stronger together. My advice: never let someone define your worth because of a title or last name. Protect your work. Know your value. And when the moment comes, take your power back. Quietly. Boldly.